What is the difference between these three dolls? Is it their hair color? Their clothes? Maybe their eye color? These dolls are all the same, or so it may appear. But when we actually get to know them, we find the following. Doll 1 has May-Thurner syndrome and has a stent placed in her left groin to help with her blood flow. Doll 2 has pseudotumor cerebri, also known as intracranial hypertension, and had a shunt placed to help relieve the pressure in her brain. Doll 3 has polycystic ovary syndrome, also known as PCOS, and depression. They all have something referred to as an invisible disability. An invisible disability, or hidden disability, is defined as a disability that is not immediately apparent. These can be things such as chronic fatigue, irritable bowel syndrome, mental illness, and so many more conditions that are not immediately apparent at first glance. If a medical condition is not affecting daily activities, it is not considered a disability. According to the University of Massachusetts, 96% of people with a chronic condition have an invisible disability. It is estimated that 10% of people in the US, 33.27 million people, have an invisible disability. Now let's bring that closer to home. According to the CDC, 56% of people in Wisconsin are living with at least one chronic disability. If we refer back to the University of Massachusetts statistic I provided earlier, that 96% of people with a chronic disability are also living with an invisible disability, that means 3.12 million people in Wisconsin alone have a disability that is classified as invisible. It is likely that you will interact with someone in your lifetime that has an invisible disability just by staying in your home state. Let me give you some scenarios. Doll 1 represents a 13-year-old girl on the playground, and you're the supervisor on the playground. You notice she's sitting all alone in a corner while other kids are playing kickball. You think she's being antisocial. So you walk over to her and you tell her, "Why aren't you playing kickball? Go play kickball with the other kids." And you keep pressuring her and pressuring her. You tell her, if you do not go play kickball with the other students, you need to go in for the remainder of recess. Little did you know that she has a condition where physical activity makes her legs swell. You couldn't tell she has this condition in her legs because physical activity makes her leg flare up and she had been sitting. She has a condition called May-Thurner syndrome, which is uncommon in young people. When her leg swells, it only swells by a few centimeters. Sometimes it's very unnoticeable, but it's very painful to the young girl. She doesn't tell you about it because she doesn't know if you'll believe her, and she wants to be treated like a normal student. She goes home that day after school to put on her compression stocking and massage her leg the way that the doctor had instructed her to. The same girl now grows up and she's 16 years old, and she is very into appearances, as most teenagers are. She wants to go swimming with her friends, but she wonders, how can she go swimming with them and wear a bathing suit without them noticing her leg enlarge? Her family decides to take her to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota to get a stent placed to help her blood flow. She misses school for a couple days, and nobody really notices or asks any questions. She is now a young girl with a stent. She gets a handicap sticker for her car to help her get from place to place without overexerting herself. The doctor hopes that this will help reduce her swelling and the pain in her legs. She goes shopping and parks her car. As she gets out of the car, a woman looks at her and scoffs and says, "You should have really saved that spot for someone who actually needed it." Embarrassed, the girl gets back in the car and drives away with tears in her eyes. Doll 2 represents someone in college. She starts getting sick and she can't figure out why. She starts losing vision in her eyes randomly, but quite frequently. She goes to the doctor to find out that she has intracranial hypertension. Her body produces too much spinal fluid and creates a pressure buildup around her brain. She gets spinal taps 3 times throughout her collegiate career, never missing one class. In pain from her procedure, she gets up in the mornings, goes to class, walks back to her dorm, goes to sleep, just to repeat the process the next day. She ends up receiving multiple awards from the university, ends up being on the honor roll, becoming commencement speaker, and gets employed full-time before graduation. She appears to have everything in order and her life is great. little did anyone guess that she was worn out most days. She had blurred vision at least 5 days out of the week, and most days, every time she would stand, she'd be so dizzy that she felt like she had to fall. Doll 3 represents a recent college grad who just got married. Everyone keeps asking her when she's going to have a baby. When are you going to start planning your family? Can I see photos of your children that you have? Little did they know that she has polycystic ovary syndrome, also known as PCOS, and her stomach bloats frequently. She has severe abdominal pain, and with her chronic conditions, she is unable to become pregnant. She and her husband have decided it is in the best interest of the woman's health to put their hopes and dreams of having a baby away. Her anxiety is through the roof from all of her hormonal imbalances that if someone even looks at her the wrong way, she thinks about it over and over and over again until she mentally shuts down. When the woman goes to the store to buy baby Tylenol, because that's the only kind of dosage she can take with her medical conditions, the cashier asks, "Is this for your baby? Oh, the poor thing must be sick." She says yes to avoid explaining her situation to the stranger. She gets back in her car feeling defeated. She battles with depression, knowing she can't give her husband what he wants most, a child. The other sad truth is, invisible disabilities and disabilities in general can exist together. According to SAMHSA.org, 9.2 million people have coexisting disorders. The stories I shared with you today are not hypothetical stories. They are real stories, they are true stories, and they are my stories. I told you in chronological order when I was diagnosed with my health issues and the battles I was facing at the time. My journey began when I was 13 years old. I was trying out for a theatrical performance. During the choreography run-through, my mother noticed that one of my legs was fatter than the other one. She took me to Milwaukee Children's Hospital, where I was diagnosed with having lymphedema. Shortly after that, my leg began to turn purple and would go numb at times. That called for a trip to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. They discovered I actually had May-Thurner syndrome. This is a rare condition found in elderly women when they shrink, and typically when they shrink and then their height lessens. My left iliac vein is compressed by my right iliac vein in my spine. In total, I've had 2 stents placed in my groin to help with my blood flow. Unfortunately, my stents have not been successful, and my superficial veins are mainly dead. About 1 year later, I began to have painful menstrual cycles and found out I had issues with my reproductive system. A few years later, I was in college and started blacking out all the time. I went to the doctor where I was diagnosed with intracranial hypertension. I've had 3 spinal taps in the last couple years for my hypertension, and my condition is unfortunately not improving. Due to the severity of my conditions, I feel the need to live life fast, which means I make the most out of my days. I'm pretty fearless when it comes to anything, and I do too much at once. I'm afraid if I don't do things right now, I won't get the most out of my life. I despise taking my time and waiting for anything. Before my time to work runs out, I want to become a director of a nonprofit organization. I want to leave the biggest impact somewhere while I can, because truly, I don't know when the next time I'm going to be diagnosed with something is that will stop me from being able to work. My conditions have prompted me to have discussions with my family I never thought I'd be having in my early 20s. Discussions such as the possibility of losing my sight, the probability I'll be in a wheelchair way earlier than I should be, the probability that I'm not going to work as long as the average person can, and so many other harsh realities that I'm facing on a daily basis. I know what it's like to stand in front of a mirror screaming and crying over conditions that you cannot change about yourself. My story is just one in 9.2 million. There are 9.2 million others battling similarly to me. When those things I told you about happened to me, I felt at my lowest and so alone. The truth is, you are never alone when fighting invisible disabilities that others cannot see. I know the struggle felt when people assume that we are healthy, when in reality, we are battling our illnesses daily in silence. The moral of the story is, people are not always what they appear. Be kind to everyone you meet and treat everyone with the respect that they rightfully deserve.